Men who understand these unspoken truths don't chase women, women chase them. Emotional validation addiction is one of the most underestimated yet powerful psychological traits in women, and most men completely overlook it. At the core of female psychology is the deep, almost subconscious need to feel seen, heard, and emotionally affirmed. From a young age, women are socially conditioned to equate their value with how others perceive them, particularly in emotional and aesthetic terms. Society constantly reinforces this through media, through upbringing, through peer dynamics, that woman's worth is somehow tied to how much attention and emotional resonance she can generate. This creates a cycle where the need for emotional feedback becomes addictive. It's not just about being complimented or told she's beautiful. It's about knowing that someone is tuned into her emotions, her mood swings, her silent thoughts, her subtle hints. Emotional validation in her world becomes like a drug. The more she gets, the more she craves, and the more powerful the man who provides or withholds it becomes. This is why the average nice guy, who showers a woman with constant attention and verbal affirmation, often gets overlooked. He's predictable. His emotional input becomes background noise. There's no tension, no challenge, no emotional roller coaster, and that roller coaster is exactly what feeds her addiction. On the flip side, the man who controls his emotional availability, who doesn't always respond instantly, who isn't quick to validate her every action or emotion, becomes a puzzle, and puzzles are addictive. His detachment becomes the fuel for her obsession, because she now has to work for the emotional validation she was so used to receiving freely. That effort, that unpredictability, triggers a part of her that is wired to chase, to prove, to please. It creates a dynamic where she subconsciously seeks his approval, not because she needs it to feel good, but because it becomes a challenge to her ego. Even in long-term relationships, this plays out. A woman may claim she wants emotional consistency, and to a degree she does, but what really keeps her invested is the intermittent reward system. This psychological concept, proven in countless behavioral studies, shows that humans, and especially emotionally driven individuals, are far more likely to become addicted to unpredictable rewards than to consistent ones. When a man occasionally provides deep emotional connection, then steps back into stoic calmness, the woman's mind starts to fixate on winning him back. She doesn't know when the next emotional high will come, so she stays alert, invested, hungry. It's the same principle casinos use with slot machines. Uncertainty creates obsession. The man who understands this doesn't need to be a jerk. He just needs to be disciplined. He controls his emotional output the way a king controls his resources, not because he lacks them, but because he understands their value. This doesn't mean playing games. It means recognizing that emotional validation is currency, and giving it away too freely, too cheaply, leads to it being devalued. When a woman knows she has to earn a man's emotional attention through her respect, her effort, her consistency, she treasures it. She sees him as a high-value man because his validation means something. Contrast this with the man who is always emotionally available, always praising, always responsive. That man quickly becomes emotionally expendable. She knows he'll always be there, so she stops trying. She may even begin to resent him, not because he's unkind, but because he lacks edge. Emotional validation is not just a weakness in women, it is a key to their emotional world. The man who learns to give it with intention, rather than desperation, becomes the man she can't stop thinking about. He becomes the emotional authority in her life, the rare figure who can make her feel alive, uncertain, excited, and emotionally fed, all while maintaining his own stoic frame. The bad boy Paradox is one of the most confusing aspects of female attraction. Men who take things at face value. On the surface, women often say they want a kind, respectful, emotionally available man. They describe their ideal partner as someone who listens, who's there for them, who treats them well and never causes drama. But their behavior, what they're actually drawn to, tells a completely different story. Time and time again, we see women rejecting men who treat them with consistent kindness, only to chase after men who are unpredictable, dominant, and emotionally distant. This isn't random. It's rooted in biology, psychology, and social conditioning. Deep within a woman's evolutionary wiring is the need for excitement, the craving for a man who embodies danger in a controlled form. Not physical danger necessarily, but emotional unpredictability, someone who doesn't conform, who doesn't seek approval, who has the power to walk away without explanation. That energy is magnetic. The bad boy represents rebellion, dominance, and strength, traits that signal power and genetic superiority. Throughout history, women were drawn to men who could protect and lead, who stood apart from the herd. The modern bad boy is simply the evolved version of the tribal leader or rogue warrior. He's the one who doesn't need anyone's validation because he validates himself. He doesn't ask for permission, and he doesn't explain himself. His energy is raw, unfiltered, and self-possessed. This creates a kind of emotional chaos that women find intoxicating, especially in contrast to the predictable routines of modern life. In today's world, where everything is structured, safe, and scheduled, a man who operates outside those norms becomes emotionally stimulating. He breaks the monotony, he makes her feel things, and it's those feelings, not logic, not checklists, that create obsession. A lot of men try to become bad boys by acting toxic, being rude, or playing manipulative games, but that misses the point entirely. What women are attracted to isn't cruelty, it's emotional depth wrapped in confidence. A true bad boy archetype isn't emotionally weak. He just doesn't reveal everything. He's mysterious. He lets his actions speak louder than his words. He makes decisions without over-explaining. He has standards, and he walks away from anyone who disrespects them, no matter how beautiful she is. That emotional detachment, that refusal to be controlled by a woman's approval or disapproval, makes him irresistible. It communicates one thing clearly: he is the prize. Another layer to this paradox is the emotional highs and lows that come with being involved with a bad boy. He doesn't offer emotional consistency. One day he's deeply present, the next he's distant. This unpredictability creates an emotional roller coaster, and that roller coaster becomes addictive. Her brain releases dopamine during the highs, and when the lows come, she craves the next high even more. She starts chasing that feeling, mistaking the anxiety and anticipation for love. The good guy, in contrast, provides emotional flatlines, steady, calm, predictable, and while those are great for long-term stability, they rarely spark passion or obsession in the beginning. Women might logically know the good guy is better for them, but logic rarely drives initial attraction. Emotion does, and bad boys generate emotional intensity. It's also important to understand how society contributes to this paradox. Romantic movies, novels, and music often glamorize the emotionally distant, tortured male figure, the brooding loner, the rebel with a hidden heart, the man who loves deeply but only shows it selectively. These characters are always the ones women fall for. And even though it's fiction, it creates very real templates in women's minds about what love should feel like. When a man mirrors those patterns in real life, when he mysterious, unpredictable, intense, he taps into those subconscious templates. A part of her believes this is what love must be. even if it leads to chaos. She may not even understand why she's drawn to him. She just is. The emotional depth of that experience overshadows the logical checklist she tells herself she wants. Ultimately, what men must realize is that being a bad boy is not about being an asshole. It's about being untamed. It's about having a sense of emotional independence that doesn't bend to others' expectations. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't have to prove it or sell it. You carry it in how you move, how you speak, how you set boundaries. You can be respectful without being submissive. You can be kind without being needy. The bad boy energy is about controlled chaos intensity that's contained by discipline. That's what women are truly addicted to, the unpredictability, the raw masculinity, the emotional confidence. It breaks through the emotional numbness that so many of them experience in today's structured, predictable world. That's why they chase it. That's why they stay hooked even when it doesn't make sense. And that's why the man who understands this dynamic never has to beg for attention because he becomes the source of emotional fire she can't get anywhere else. Competition and envy play a far more significant role in female psychology than most men understand. At first glance, it may appear that women are always supportive of each other, constantly encouraging one another on social media, complimenting each other's appearance, and promoting sisterhood. But beneath the surface, there is a deeply rooted, primal instinct that kicks in whenever a woman perceives another woman as a threat, especially in the presence of a man she desires or values. This instinct has evolutionary roots. In tribal societies, men of high status were limited resources. Women had to compete for access to these men, not just for sex, but for protection, provision, and survival. That competitive dynamic hasn't gone away. It's simply taken on more subtle, socially acceptable forms in modern times. A woman may not openly express jealousy or rivalry, but it manifests in ways most men miss. Watch her body language when an attractive woman walks by. Notice her sudden shift in tone if you mention another woman's name. Pay attention to how she tries to subtly discredit other women in conversation. These are not accidental. These are covert tactics used to re-establish her position of dominance in your eyes. The moment a woman senses that another female is capturing your attention or admiration, her emotional landscape changes. She becomes more alert, more performative, and often more controlling. She might criticize the other woman's appearance, personality, or even her intentions. This is not because she genuinely dislikes that woman. It's because her ego feels threatened. That threat translates into a psychological battle to regain your focus and affection. This dynamic becomes especially intense when a man is perceived as high value. The more options you have, the more emotionally activated women become around you. Women are incredibly intuitive in reading social cues, and they can sense very quickly when a man is desired by others. If you're a man who gets attention from women, even subtly, it changes the way other women perceive you. You go from being just another guy to being the guy who has options, and in the female mind, that's powerful. It triggers her desire to compete, to stand out, to prove that she's better than the rest. That's why some women who seemed uninterested suddenly start chasing you when they see you with another attractive woman. It's not always because they've had a change of heart. Often, it's because they want to win the game. Your desirability in eyes of others raises your value in hers. This is why social proof is such a powerful concept. A man who is constantly surrounded by beautiful women doesn't need to say he's high value. Women can see it, they can feel it, and that unspoken competition creates emotional tension. Even women who pride themselves on being emotionally mature are not immune to this. In fact, the more emotionally invested she is in you, the stronger her competitive instincts become. She may not even realize she's acting out of envy or rivalry, but it leaks through her actions. She might suddenly become more affectionate, dress more attractively, or try to monopolize your time. These behaviors are attempts to resecure her place in your emotional hierarchy. Men who fail to recognize this dynamic often make the mistake of over-reassuring their women. They downplay the presence of other females, try to make their partner feel safe by limiting contact with other women, or avoid making her jealous at all costs. But in doing so, they unknowingly sabotage their own value. When you try too hard to remove all competition, you remove the very tension that keeps her emotionally engaged. Women don't want to feel like they've completely won you. They want to feel like they're constantly winning you, like they have to earn your attention, your commitment, your admiration. It keeps them invested, present, and emotionally alive. If she feels no competition, she feels no urgency, and when there's no urgency, complacency sets in. This isn't about playing games or deliberately making her jealous. It's about understanding the natural dynamics of attraction and letting them work in your favor. You don't need to brag about your options. You don't need to rub other women in her face. You just need to live a life where your value is evident and where your presence naturally attracts female attention. The mere fact that you're desired by others will trigger a response in her. She may try to hide it, she may act indifferent, but internally the competition switch has been flipped, and once it's on, she's operating on instinct. That's when you'll see her start to invest more, seduce more, try harder to keep your focus on her. This principle also explains why many women are more attracted to taken men. It's not just the allure of the forbidden, it's the social validation. If another woman, especially one who is attractive and confident, sees value in a man, that value becomes more real in the eyes of others. It's like a silent endorsement. The female brain processes that signal as if she chose him, he must be worth something. It doesn't matter whether that man has changed or not. He now carries the aura of desirability. This is why women will sometimes circle back to a man they previously ignored the moment he's no longer single. It's not about love, it's about competition and validation. Understanding this hidden world of female competition gives you a serious advantage. Most men are completely blind to it. They think women are only driven by emotional connection or compatibility, when in reality, a huge portion of their behavior is shaped by the subtle dance of envy, ego, and rivalry. When you become aware of this, you stop reacting emotionally and start moving strategically. You stop trying to overcompensate or over-explain. You allow the natural tension of competition to keep her interested, and you maintain your frame as a man who is always desired, never desperate. Validation through beauty is one of the deepest psychological drivers in a woman's world, and it's a weakness that runs so silently and thoroughly through her daily life that most men underestimate its grip. From the time she is a young girl, she is subtly and not so subtly conditioned to believe that her physical appearance holds massive social and emotional currency. Compliments about her looks, the praise she receives for being cute, the attention given to her outfits, and the comparison to other girls, all these things shape her internal value system. While men are generally validated for what they do, build, or achieve, women are more frequently validated for how they look. Over time, this creates a powerful internal reward system where attention and admiration for her physical appearance are tied directly to her sense of worth, confidence, and even security. In today's digital age, this obsession with external validation has been turbocharged. Social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat provide a constant stream of feedback loops that reinforce the idea that beauty equals value. Every like, comment, and share becomes a hit of dopamine, a mini boost to her ego, reinforcing the belief that her physical presence is not only noticed but worshipped. She begins to curate her image carefully, angles, filters, lighting, poses, because she understands, consciously or not, that her beauty is her social leverage. She may never admit this out loud, but the constant drive to enhance, display, and flaunt her appearance is not just about expression, it's about control. Control over perception, over men, over status. The irony, though, is that this constant need for beauty-based validation can become a prison. The more attention she gets, the more she needs it. She becomes hypersensitive to compliments, to stares, to reactions of men and even other women. If the validation slows down, even slightly, she begins to question herself. Am I losing it? Do I look tired? Is someone else outshining me? Her self-worth starts fluctuating based on external responses. This is why some women invest obsessively in beauty rituals, plastic surgeries, cosmetic enhancements, and fitness routines, not for health or self-love, but to maintain a competitive edge in the game of attraction. It's a race that has no finish line, because beauty, by society's standards, is both temporary and endlessly scrutinized. This dependency creates vulnerability. When a man fully understands this, he can choose to either manipulate or master the art of balance. Most men either give too much validation, showering her with constant praise, always reminding her how beautiful she is, becoming emotionally addicted to her looks, or they pull back completely, thinking they're being stoic by never acknowledging her attractiveness. Both extremes are unwise. The man who praises her endlessly loses power because his compliments begin to feel desperate. The man who withholds too much comes off as emotionally unavailable or insecure. The wise man knows that beauty validation must be given intentionally, selectively, and unpredictably. Like rare gold, when you give it sparingly, it increases in value. When you tell a beautiful woman she looks amazing, not every day, but on a day she didn't expect it, it hits harder, it lingers, it becomes addictive. Another important element is the shift in power when a man is not emotionally moved by a woman's beauty. This doesn't mean he doesn't recognize it. It means he isn't controlled by it. Women are used to men being overwhelmed by their looks. They know how to use a glance, a smile, a seductive pose to get what they want. But when a man is unshaken, when he maintains eye contact without flinching, when he doesn't lose his composure, when he speaks to her like she's a normal human being and not some rare goddess, he immediately becomes different. He separates himself from the masses, and because she's used to her beauty being a weapon of control, the fact that it has no power over him disorients her. It makes her curious, it challenges her ego, and that curiosity turns into attraction. The deeper layer of this weakness is how beauty becomes tied to morality in the female psyche. A woman who is considered beautiful is often treated better in society, given more opportunities, more attention, and more forgiveness. This reinforces a false sense of superiority. She may begin to believe that because she's attractive, she's also more valuable, more important, or even more virtuous. This creates a dangerous entitlement. She starts to expect doors to open for her, to be treated like a queen just because of how she looks, not because of what she brings to the table emotionally, intellectually, or spiritually. But when a man challenges that, when he doesn't pedestalize her or treat her like a prize just because she's attractive, he forces her to confront the parts of herself that she often neglects, her character, her empathy, her depth. This is why some of the most beautiful women in the world are also the most insecure. They live in fear that their greatest asset, beauty, will fade, be surpassed, or lose its effect. They may be used to admiration, but admiration is not love, it's not respect, it's not loyalty, and in moments of emotional depth, many of them find themselves hollow because they've spent so long developing their surface that their core has been left unattended. A high-value man recognizes this, and he doesn't fall for the illusion. He may appreciate beauty, but he does not worship it. He values discipline, self-respect, emotional intelligence, and loyalty far more than just aesthetics. And when he treats a woman accordingly, he gives her a chance to grow beyond the validation trap if she's willing. But many women are not willing. They cling to their beauty as a safety net, a source of power. They manipulate with it, market themselves with it, and make decisions through its lens. And when it fails to get them what they want, they panic. Because for them, beauty isn't just a feature, it's an identity. And anything that threatens that identity threatens their entire emotional structure. Men who understand this can see through the illusion. They don't get caught up in the show. They observe the woman's actions, her emotional maturity, her ability to handle adversity. They watch how she treats others when no one's looking. Because a truly high-value man knows that beauty is common, but depth, discipline, and loyalty are rare. And he doesn't trade real value for surface-level appeal. He watches, he waits, and he validates only when it is earned. Emotional manipulation is one of the most powerful and dangerous weaknesses embedded in the psychology of many women. Not because women are inherently malicious, but because emotional influence is something they are biologically and socially trained to master from a young age. Unlike physical strength, which favors men, women have historically relied on emotional intelligence, subtlety, persuasion, and indirect influence to navigate the world and secure what they need, particularly in male-dominated structures. Over time, this cultivated a kind of intuitive skill set, one that allows many women to read emotional cues quickly, sense vulnerability instantly, and strategically use emotions to steer interactions in their favor, whether it's to win sympathy, evade accountability, gain attention, or get what they want. Emotional manipulation becomes a covert weapon cloaked in soft tones and well-timed tears. The art of emotional manipulation works best when the man is unaware it's happening. It doesn't come in form of direct aggression. It's subtle. It's wrapped in concern, guilt, silence, or even affection. A woman may not say, "You're hurting me," but she'll withdraw emotionally, becoming distant and cold, forcing the man to chase her to restore warmth. She may not openly demand something, but she'll drop hints, sigh, act burdened, or look disappointed, pulling the man's guilt strings until he acts out of pressure rather than desire. This is especially true in romantic relationships, where the emotional stakes are high. If a woman senses that her words or tears can shift the balance of power, she learns to weaponize them, not always consciously, but with devastating effect. This behavior is often learned through observation. A young girl might see how her mother gets her way by crying during arguments or withdrawing affection from her father. She learns that emotional displays can override logic, that tears can end a conflict faster than reason, that vulnerability can be used as leverage. Over time, this develops into patterns. She may grow into a woman who unconsciously equates emotional discomfort with powerlessness, and so she manipulates her environment to avoid it. When faced with a disagreement, instead of addressing the issue head-on, she may play the victim. She might shift blame subtly, making the man feel like the villain for expressing his own needs. This inversion of accountability is a classic move, because the more the man feels like the aggressor, the more she can position herself as the wounded, innocent party. But emotional manipulation doesn't stop at playing the victim. It also shows up in how she uses praise, affection, and intimacy as tools of control. One moment, she may shower a man with love, attention, and physical touch, making him feel like he's everything to her. The next moment, that same affection is gone, vanished without explanation. She pulls back, creating confusion, uncertainty, and emotional chaos. The man, now desperate to regain the emotional high he once felt, starts working harder, trying to win her back, trying to please her. She's trained him, without saying a word, to respond to her withdrawal by increasing his investment. This push-pull dynamic becomes an emotional roller coaster that keeps the man bonded, addicted even, to the highs and lows of her approval. A particularly dangerous tactic is when a woman uses emotions to distract from responsibility. When caught in a lie or wrongdoing, instead of owning up, she might burst into tears, claim she's being attacked, or accuse the man of being insensitive or controlling. This deflection turns the focus away from her actions and onto the man's reaction. Suddenly, he's defending his tone, his choice of words, or his emotional response, rather than holding her accountable. Over time, this creates a dynamic where the man learns to walk on eggshells, fearing that any confrontation will lead to emotional chaos. He becomes more passive, less expressive, more accommodating, and in doing so, he gives up his power. The tragedy is that many men don't even realize they're being manipulated. They mistake emotional volatility for passion. They see guilt, tripping as a sign of love. They confuse conditional affection for romantic standards. And because men are often taught to suppress their own emotions, they are ill-equipped to recognize or respond to emotional manipulation when it's used against them. Instead, they internalize it. They blame themselves. They think, maybe I am being too cold, or maybe I should have said it differently, or maybe I'm not giving her enough. They become trapped in a loop of self-doubt, trying to earn the love of someone who is only offering it as a reward for compliance. But make no mistake, emotional manipulation is about control. Whether it's the silent treatment, gaslighting, excessive flattery, followed by emotional abandonment, or playing hot and cold, these are not acts of love. They are strategies designed to place the manipulator in a position of emotional dominance, and because they often occur under the guise of romance, caring, or emotional vulnerability, they are incredibly difficult to detect and even harder to confront without backlash. A man who calls out emotional manipulation often gets labeled as insensitive, cold, or even abusive, when in reality, he is trying to reclaim his mental and emotional clarity. A woman who has mastered emotional manipulation can keep a man entangled for years. She'll create situations where he constantly doubts himself, where he questions his instincts, where he becomes afraid to speak his truth. She'll know exactly how to twist his words, how to cry at just the right moment, how to make him feel like everything is his fault. And once he believes it's all on him, she can control the relationship without ever raising her voice. That's the power of emotional manipulation. It's silent, it's stealthy, and it's suffocating. The key to breaking free is awareness. A man must learn to separate emotional expression from emotional coercion. He must recognize when he's being guilted, not guided, when his empathy is being exploited, not appreciated, when his desire to care is being turned against him, and most importantly, he must learn to hold the line, not with anger, but with calm, unwavering standards. He must be willing to lose the relationship if the alternative is losing himself, because emotional manipulation only works on those who are afraid to walk away. When a man values his peace, clarity, and emotional integrity more than temporary validation, the manipulator loses her grip. She can cry, scream, guilt, or retreat, but none of it works if the man refuses to dance to the tune. This is not about becoming cold or heartless. It's about developing discernment. Not every emotional display is manipulation, but when patterns emerge, when emotional outbursts become tactics, when affection becomes transactional, a man must trust what he sees and not just what he hears, because love is not manipulation, and a relationship built on emotional games is nothing more than psychological warfare. Status envy is one of the most hidden yet potent psychological triggers in many women, and it operates far deeper than just wanting luxury items or being associated with wealth. It is rooted in biology, social dynamics, and cultural conditioning. At its core, status envy stems from a deep-seated desire for security, admiration, and social elevation. A woman who is driven by status envy doesn't just want to have more, she wants to be seen having more. She wants to feel superior, to be envied by other women, to have her lifestyle validated by the admiration of peers. The pursuit of status becomes a proxy for self-worth. The man who understands this sees beyond her surface desires and starts to recognize how her internal battles with comparison, image, and validation manifest in relationships, expectations, and behavior. Unlike men, who may seek status to establish dominance, influence, or legacy, many women pursue status to elevate their perceived social value, especially in the eyes of other women. It's not simply about having a Gucci bag or a luxury car, it's about being the kind of woman who gets that kind of life. It's about being chosen by a hive, man, being seen at the right places, taking curated vacations, posting filtered pictures of luxury meals and exotic beaches. The modern age of social media has amplified this exponentially. Every scroll through Instagram is a highlight reel of other women's status symbols, designer outfits, perfect relationships, high-end experiences, and each post serves as a subconscious reminder: you're either winning or you're watching others win. This environment creates a relentless internal competition. A woman driven by status envy doesn't just want success. She wants to outperform. She wants to be the one whose engagement ring is the biggest, whose boyfriend is the most admired, whose lifestyle evokes awe and envy. And here's where it becomes a hidden weakness. This constant drive for comparative elevation creates emotional instability. She becomes anxious when others are praised more. She feels threatened when another woman receives more attention. She gets restless in a relationship that doesn't provide optics of prestige. Her sense of happiness becomes tethered to her perceived rank in the social hierarchy, and this often leads her to make decisions based not on love, loyalty, or values, but on optics, access, and elevation. In romantic relationships, this status-driven mindset can become toxic. A woman consumed by status envy will often view her man not as a partner, but as a status symbol. She gauges his value based on how he enhances her image. Is he admired? Is he successful? Do others want to be her? If he fails to meet these criteria, she may begin to withdraw respect, affection, or commitment. She might begin to flirt with others who appear to offer more status, not because she's necessarily dissatisfied emotionally, but because she fears being outclassed by other women. Her loyalty, therefore, is conditional. As long as the relationship feeds her social status, she is devoted, but the moment it starts to feel average, stagnant, or invisible, her interest declines and the search for a higher status option begins. The deeper problem with status envy is that it creates a performance-based relationship dynamic. Everything becomes a show. The man is expected to constantly impress, upgrade, and deliver. He must dress well, earn well, speak well, and keep rising, because his growth reflects her desirability. This pressure may not be voiced directly, but it shows in her subtle disappointments, her comparisons to other couples, her dissatisfaction masked as just wanting more out of life. Over time, the man feels like he's not loved for who he is, but for what he can represent. He becomes a character in her social performance, rather than a real partner in an intimate, grounded relationship. Status envy also fuels unnecessary conflict. A woman who is deeply invested in status may pressure her man to match an unrealistic lifestyle. She may mock his ambitions, push him to upgrade prematurely, or compare him to more successful men. This creates resentment, as the man feels constantly measured and rarely appreciated. Worse, she might play mind games, pretending to be attracted to other men or fantasizing about certain lifestyles just to provoke him into action. These tactics are not signs of high standards, but manifestations of inner insecurity driven by comparison. The truth is, her hunger for status often masks a fragile self-esteem that depends on external validation to feel whole. There's also a social cost. A woman plagued by status envy may sabotage friendships, isolate herself, or constantly judge others based on what they have rather than who they are. She may gossip, belittle, or undermine other women who threaten her perceived rank. She might live beyond her means, making reckless financial decisions to project a lifestyle she can't actually sustain. And all of this stems from one psychological flaw. She believes that being admired for what she has is more important than being respected for who she is. For a man, recognizing this pattern is crucial. If he gets involved with a woman driven by status envy, he must understand that her affection will be conditional. The relationship will be fueled by appearance, not substance. The moment he loses his job or goes through a rough patch or stops feeding her sense of superiority, she may emotionally detach. And when she meets a man who appears to offer more status, whether it's money, influence, or clout, she may rationalize infidelity, disrespect, or emotional withdrawal. Not because she doesn't care, but because she values status more than stability. There's also a risk for the man to become consumed by her hunger. In trying to satisfy her, he may lose himself, working longer hours, taking financial risks, pretending to be someone he's not, just to meet her expectations. He may become addicted to the performance himself, living not for fulfillment but for optics. And this cycle, once it starts, rarely ends well, because no level of external success can satisfy someone whose inner identity is defined by comparison. A woman who is truly high-value, you may enjoy status, but she isn't ruled by it. She respects ambition, but she doesn't demand perfection. She supports growth, but she doesn't tie her love to material conditions. And most importantly, she values depth over display. She chooses a man for his integrity, not his image. But when a woman's weakness is status envy, none of this applies. Her love is performance-based. Her loyalty is situational, and her self-worth is fragile, constantly fluctuating with the opinions and perceptions of others. The only way for a man to protect himself from being drained by a woman consumed with status envy is to know his own value, build his life on solid foundations, and never trade authenticity for approval. He must recognize the difference between a woman who genuinely supports his growth and one who only wants to benefit from the image of success. Because in the end, a relationship built on substance will outlast one built on spectacle. A man rooted in self-worth cannot be manipulated by someone whose self-image depends on comparison. And when he stops trying to impress and starts demanding peace, the power dynamic shifts. He no longer plays a part in someone else's performance. He writes his own script, and only those who respect the man behind the curtain will earn a place in his life.